Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here on a busy Thursday evening. Sorry we didn't get the show out earlier on Thursday. Well, it's been a busy day. I'm glad we didn't. But in addition to all that, my power got knocked out last night. We were going to record, and then my power went out and it didn't come on until the middle of the night. So we pushed it to today, and today being Thursday, we're recording this Thursday night. And boy, am I glad we made that decision. Probably one of the most fortuitous power outages you could possibly have when you talk about what went down today at UCF. Remember, you can follow us at UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are SB Nation's home for UCF sports news, which all of a sudden has been coming in droves today, this week, boys. It feels like they were holding back the water, and then just the dam broke, and here we are. Turns out UCF has a football schedule now. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how the non-conference portion of the schedule has been put together. We're going to talk about the American releasing its plans for the Olympic sports as well. We're going to talk about the preseason coaches poll, which I know is much to Erik Lopez's delight. And we're also going to talk about some news with McKenzie Milton and some comings and goings as well here on today's episode. But we're going to start with the schedule coming out. And, we were thinking that this would come out. It all came out on Wednesday with the American announcing that their plan has come about. The idea for the working plan for the American is that every team would play 8 conference games plus basically whatever else they can get. Mostly looking at how this plays out. The conference competition is set to begin September the 19th. Non-conference games will be played, maybe played at the discretion of the individual schools, with the understanding that the opponents will strictly adhere to protocols and standards for testing, pregame, in-game, and post-game operations set by the Americans' medical advisory group. Who exactly is in the medical advisory group for the American, we don't know. Depending on the need to schedule regular season games, they're flexing the conference championship between December 5th, 12th, or 19th at the home of the regular season champion. It's going to be one division of 11 teams, but that's the plan. So UCF retains its conference schedule. We were thinking for a while that would pretty much be it, aside from FIU, which it looked like FIU was the only game that had not been canceled due to what the ACC was doing. Well, news comes down today, the day after Danny White spoke about the schedule, that yes, indeed, UCF will play Georgia Tech. The North Carolina game is basically scotched, although Danny White couldn't say that. But he was hopeful yesterday, and then we were confirmed today by UCF that the game is on for September 19th. That's a Saturday. It was scheduled to be a Friday game. They moved it to the Saturday, and so UCF will play a non-conference game against Georgia Tech, in addition to FIU, as far as we know. And there's also the possibility of, from information we have gathered, that the Florida A&M game, which was scheduled for November, may also still be on due to what we're going to talk about now. But first of all, Brian Murphy, you've been all over this like white on rice, man. And first of all, thanks to you for your incredibly hard work in following everything that's been going on and trying to make sense of it. Because if at times it seems like things are kind of being made up as we go along and UCF is kind of along for the ride, you're not alone in thinking that. But just the events of the last 36 hours, how did it all break down for you? And what do you think about the current result right now?
Well, yeah, it's like we only had to wait 5 months for actual sports news, and then it all sort of released in the span of like you said, a couple of days, which is totally fine. So I'm glad to be busy. I will say, so I want to correct a couple things you said during your intro.
I knew I was going to get something wrong.
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, whatever. We do know who is. This may not be the most important thing that I'm going to mention, but we do know who is on the Americans COVID-19 medical advisory. There are representatives from each of the each of the universities in the AAC. UCF's representative, Jeffrey, you should know who this is. Who is representing UCF on the Americans COVID-19 medical advisory group? You know this, Jeff.
I don't. I'm going to get. Could it be Mary Vanderheiden?
It's Mary Vanderheiden.
Okay, yeah, good. Okay, good for Mary.
Yes,
I feel happy.
She's on the group. The group is chaired by Dr. Greg Stewart at Tulane. So I want to make sure, and we all know who's the representative. So we do know who that is. And then it's amazing how things have sort of transpired with the UCF football schedule here in the last couple of days. I mean, this is going back weeks now. Or really back to when the AACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, released their schedule plan. We thought at that time, we wrote about it, that it certainly looks like the North Carolina game is dead and the Georgia Tech game is hanging by a thread. And certainly the North Carolina game is off. You can look at that. That is completely done. It's not going to happen. It's been erased from UCF's schedule. It's not in any part of the ACC's big picture plan that they posted today. That game is done. However, the Georgia Tech game somehow pulled through. It was on, and then it was sort of off, and now it's back on again. And it is, like you said, Jeffrey, it's on Saturday, September 19th. The interesting twist on that is, yes, it was moved back a day, but really it wasn't. It was just moved back to its original day. Remember,
right.
This game was originally scheduled when the schedule first came out for the 19th on Saturday, September 19th. Then moved up to the 18th in February, which would
television.
Yes, and it also helped give UCF an extra day to prepare for their following game, which is September 24th at ECU. It's a road game. So back-to-back road games on a short week, so give them another day to prepare. Well, so much for that, because now it's back on the 19th. UCF is back to having only 4 days between road games that week. But I think if you had to ask them, whether they would take the extra day or lose the Georgia Tech game, they'd much rather waste the extra day so they can have the actual Georgia Tech game. They want that game badly. It's by far their biggest non-conference game. They wanted it really badly, so I'm glad they've gotten it. And then now the question is, how does UCF go about filling out their schedule? Like you said, Jeff, we hear things about the FAMU game, but it's not just us. Danny White has been very open and clear about, Danny White said on Wednesday he was optimistic that they would be able to schedule the FAMU game as it was on November 7th. Remember, that was originally scheduled anyway, but then that game was wiped once FAMU's MEAC conference, Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, suspended its fall sports season last month. So that game was dead, but apparently Danny's very optimistic that game can be put back on with FAMU playing as an independent. And I take Danny's word for that because he said the exact same thing about the Georgia Tech game, and that has proven true. So I would imagine that FAMU game on November 7th is going to happen. And now that would give UCF 11 games, 6 on the road, 6 at home. And so UCF and it would give them 3 non-conference games. So UCF would be able to add,
including a road game against the Power 5 team.
Right. So UCF would now have, if you include the FAMU game, which is not official yet, but I feel like it will be soon. If you include all that, UCF would now have 11 games, 6 at home, 3 non-conference. They're allowed 1 more game in each category. So it would behoove UCF. Really, what Danny White would like to get is 1 more home game, against a G5 or FCS team. Remember, you can schedule 2 FCS opponents this year, and they can both count toward your bowl eligibility. So even if they have FAMU, they can still schedule another FCS team, and that would still count toward their bowl win tally. They can get to the 6 win minimum. So you could look at that open date. All of a sudden, that's an open date. That was the first week of September, and say could they put a team in there? Maybe. I'm not sure. What we do know is that UCF will not play in week 0. They will not play in the last weekend of August, which some teams are. Mm-hmm. It's just too soon. If they were going to do that, they needed to start their training camp earlier. And so it's just too much to do that. So the earliest UCF would play would be that September 5th weekend. It could be against a G5 or FCS team that would need to meet 2 conditions. They would have to be somewhere in the region of UCF. They could be in the state of Florida, but if they're in Georgia or South Carolina, they'll accept that too. But also they need to meet the AAC's testing protocol in terms of coronavirus. Now, the AAC has been they haven't really been great at divulging details over what exactly their testing protocols are. They said this week that they would come out shortly with a full list of protocols. All we know right now is that the AAC wants every team to test their players 72 hours before a game. But as far as protocols, we're not exactly sure what that means. But if an opponent meets the standards that the AAC and UCF is looking for and is close by, and has an open date, willing to play maybe on that first week, or also they have another bye, I believe in October. And if one of those 2 weeks, UCF could find a way to get that 12th game, get that 6th home game, get that 4th non-conference game, which is what they're shooting for. They're not saying they're going to play all 12 because, again, no one should assume you're going to play all 12 under these conditions. But at least you give yourself a chance to play a full schedule.
The October date, by the way, is Saturday, October the 10th, which was scheduled to be UCF's regular bye week. Their game after that is the Friday, October 16th game at the Liberty Bowl against Memphis. So I would imagine if I'm Danny White and Josh Heupel, I'm trying to get something on September the 5th at home with somebody nearby, because I don't want my team playing 12 straight games, especially 6 days between whoever you're playing on Saturday, October 10th, and then Memphis. Erik, go ahead.
One more thing, and it's so very fluid. People should understand, there might be a game that weekend, there might not be a game that weekend. And also, one more thing I wanted to bring up is that going into this fall season for football, it was required that every team have a 29-day training camp in which you could fit in, I believe, 24 or 25 padded practices before your first game. Having a 29-day training camp was required before your first game. But UCF, who was scheduled to practice starting Thursday, did not. And it's not because that there was some sort of outbreak. It's really because they're just still trying to manage how all of this is going to work. There are a lot of moving pieces right now. It sounds a little chaotic. It's all very fluid. And what was once required, like I said, that 29-day requirement period, that might not actually end up being required. Everything is sort of in flux, as with everything in the world, but certainly with college baseball, with college football as well. You just sort of have to live day by day with it. So we're not exactly sure when UCF is even going to hold its first training camp padded practice. It could be Friday. It could be next week. I'm not sure. We don't know when their first game is going to be. It looks like it could be the 12th, but it could also be earlier. You got to tune in every day and find out if something changes.
Another bit of news from that, by the way, you mentioned at least the current opener would be at home against FIU and Butch Davis on Saturday, September the 12th in not Spectrum Stadium, by the way, the Bounce House. It's official name. Danny White or UCF confirmed that to you, Murph. Great scoop. Boy, that thing went viral in a hurry. And in addition to that, at least as far as we know, that's a temporary thing, at least as of right now, until UCF can find a naming sponsor for the stadium formerly known as Bright House Networks and Spectrum Stadium. All right, Erik Lopez. Count me as one of the people who is extremely skeptical, obviously. We all were that the Georgia Tech game could be pulled off. But at least as of right now, they pulled it off. And, I got to give credit not just to Danny White and Josh Heupel, but also Todd Stansbury, UCF's former athletic director, now at Georgia Tech, and Jeff Collins, formerly a defensive coordinator at UCF and linebacker coach, now the head coach at Georgia Tech. They got the job done here. And they got UCF coming in as their one non-conference game. Are you as surprised as maybe the rest of are that Georgia Tech decided, yeah, let's do this?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Heck, Mark Daniels was surprised on the air too. So if Mark Daniels is surprised, I think we all should be surprised. Yeah, I think credit to Todd Stansbury. I hope UCF fans, and it's funny, they like to, who I think he did a pretty good job here. And yet some people kind of hold some things against him. Should be thanking him because they didn't have to do this game. I don't know.
It always goes back to how he left, right? It's always UCF fans aren't very good at saying goodbye. But anyway,
I don't know how much Jeff Collins had to say in this. I don't think Jeff Collins is excited about this at all, personally, because he's about to get destroyed that week, embarrassed. But I think a couple things here three things that are fascinating about this. I think you got sources up there, and Jeff, and your sources are telling you that a certain television network maybe had an influence in that game staying.
I've talked to a bunch of people around Atlanta, and they seem to indicate that, because remember I used to work up there, that ESPN had some influence on this and wanted a quality game. And, we know that the two options for Georgia Tech at home were either Gardner-Webb, which is a 3-hour drive away, or UCF. And the word that, I heard from a couple people I talked to up there was, hey, man, ESPN does not want Gardner-Webb on their television screen.
Right.
So that kind of forced Georgia Tech into it, more or less into UCF, which, I don't know how true that is or not, but I wouldn't be surprised by that, especially in a stage where, we just don't know, what we're going to have when we even get to September 19th, which is
right.
Which is a month and 2 weeks away. Who knows what 6 weeks are going to do? But
it would make sense though, because UCF.
That flips the script on its head. That ESPN doesn't like us, huh?
Yeah, for all those of you that says ESPN's anti-UCF, well, guess what? You might want to apologize to them too, or thank them as well, because I kind of buy that to some extent, because they do help make TV matchups. I mean, one of the matchups that was announced on Thursday, Navy, who lost the Notre Dame game, will host BYU on Labor Day night on ESPN. Who helped set that up? I mean, you got two brands there, which I've told you, Jeff. Navy's a brand, and BYU. So they set that up. So I do think, from an ESPN standpoint, in a year where you're going to be lacking non-conference games, and here's an opportunity. We have a UCF team that is ranked in the top 25, should be ranked going into that game at Georgia Tech. Yeah, you probably want to keep that game on your schedule TV slot. So I can see some encouragement there. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it that we don't know how much Georgia Tech would have had to pay to get out of this game, right?
Right. This game's already been rescheduled once.
So maybe it was one of those things where if I'm Todd Stansbury, I'm like, I really don't want to get myself out of this game. It could be expensive to get out of this game. Why not just get this game over with? and move on. And I think there's something to be said for that. You get this game out of the way. There's no pressure on Georgia Tech. They're not going to be any good this year. So if they lose, they're supposed to lose. So I think those combination of those two things, I think, help save this game. And I think it's great. I mean, UCF should get, I think you'll get a good check out of this game. There'll probably be an interesting TV slot.
Listen, I hate saying it, but it's true. It's a big help.
Yeah, I mean, look, all of this is economic driven. Let's not kid. Which now let's bring up this point here, and Murph, you brought this up as well. The game is moved back to Saturday, which originally was to Saturday, and they got moved to Friday. So now UCF has got a game on Saturday on the road, as you mentioned, and now would go to East Carolina on a short week on Thursday. I don't know what caused the change from Friday to Saturday. The only thing I could speculate is there's this thing called the NBA playoffs in a bubble that's going to be going on right around that time. So maybe ESPN told them, like, yeah, we don't have that slot that we used to have anymore. So that could be a factor in why they moved it back to Saturday. But that does create an interesting dilemma there in that it's a short week. And depending on the testing protocol, guys, that's going to affect the testing schedule a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, in that case, you would have to see UCF players tested, and I guess, not only tested but also come back. I guess only tested. I guess the results come back later, but you have to be tested. At least 72 hours before a game, so they would have to be tested Monday, following that Saturday game, leading into the Thursday game at ECU. So yeah, it could certainly make things difficult. But for me, I mean, obviously coronavirus makes everything difficult. It's a part of everything that everyone is doing, both in football and otherwise. So, just because we're not mentioning it in every sentence here doesn't mean we're not aware of it. But my concern is just the fact that you have a road game on a Saturday, then come back home only to go to another road game, which means you probably lose a walkthrough practice or a very rushed walkthrough practice on Wednesday, travel again for a game on Thursday. That is a very, very quick turnaround to not only travel, but to heal up and get ready physically for that. I mean, they don't even do that. They hardly do that in the NFL.
Yeah, and the hard part about that, from what I see is, and I'm probably going to catch flack for this, but I don't care. I think actually East Carolina is going to be improved this year, and we saw what Holton Ahlers did over the course of the final 4 games last season, and it looks like he's kind of turned a corner right now. We'll have to see what ECU looks like, but based on the evidence that we have, at least as of right now, let's not consider that game a layup on the road either. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, Holton Ahlers is on preseason watch lists. I mean, he's been given some national respect. I mean, I think he was certainly raw when we saw him 2 years ago. But you could see the big arm, the body, the movement skills for a guy of his size. Like he can be a real difference maker. As long as his accuracy sustains.
Right.
If he's accurate, he's really, really good because he's got all the physical tools to be a really good college quarterback. So,
and the way the schedule, but at least the way the schedule breaks down, by the way, after the ECU game, UCF gets obviously you get the extra couple days before facing Tulsa at home.
Well, let me ask you, is there any chance they consider moving the ECU game to a Friday or Saturday? Any chance?
I would think that UCF's going to lobby for it because for both those teams, for both East Carolina and UCF, like they don't have all of a sudden like another Friday game the following week. Like they can move that game back, and I believe their next game is the following Saturday. So they would still have a full week to prepare for their next game. So I'm sure the UCF will try to lobby the best they can to give themselves an extra day somewhere.
Yeah, but ultimately it comes down to what ESPN says, because ESPN's scheduled to televise that game on Thursday, September 24th. And the same thing with Memphis too, because remember they have that off the 10th, and then the Memphis game is on that Friday, so technically it's one less day that you have to prepare for that. That's a good question. I don't know. Let me wrap this portion of the conversation by asking the both of you, and Murph, I'll start with you. What are the percentage chances you think that UCF will get a 12th game on September 5th to finish off the schedule?
I don't want to marry myself to the September 5th date, but I do think
I'm going to do it anyway, so you may as well just run with it.
Oh, Jesus. Whatever. I'm not even gonna acknowledge that part of the question. So I will say that UCF has like a 90% chance to get a 12th game. They're gonna get a 12th game.
Oh, I guarantee it.
Erik,
I
hear that? Murph is bullish on a 12th game.
Well, I guarantee it's 100%. He's going to get the 12th game.
Erik's more bullish.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's enough programs that are desperate enough they'll take the check. So
yeah,
you'll find it.
Is it going to be another G5? Do you think, or an FCS?
Does it matter? Doesn't matter.
Either one both work. It doesn't matter. Either one works.
I know, but if you're, I'm thinking if you're among the fan base, you'd rather see a G5 team than an FCS team, obviously, right?
No. Would you rather play a football game or not play a football game?
That's really what this is about. I don't really think it's because, first of all, I think there's going to be limited fans to begin with. Florida State announced on Thursday about a 20 to 25% capacity. And I do think that's relevant because I'm guessing, right? And I think we've learned this. There's a reason why Danny White wants that 7 home games, right? Because I think he's expecting to have some limited fans and get some of that revenue back, right? He's not doing this if he knows he's got nobody in the building. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is clearly a business. So to Murph's point, you're going to have a limited fan base. And I don't have you guys could do the math quickly. Let's say they go 20%. What is that? 8,000, 10,000 in the stadium?
9,000 people.
Yeah.
You're going to get 9,000 people to go watch UCF play, Stetson for all they care. You know what I mean? This ain't a situation where you're trying to fill.
Wouldn't that be something?
This is not a situation where you're trying to fill 45,000. I think to Murph's point. So I think you could see a scenario. It could be FAU, which obviously there's relations there with the ADs. If this whole FAMU thing, which is a joke, but whatever, if they are an independent, I would argue then why isn't Bethune-Cookman, who's leaving the MEAC with FAMU to go to the SWAC, couldn't they make the same argument that they are an independent? If that's the case, they're right here. So UCF could schedule that. They could also schedule somebody like a Georgia State or somebody like that. So I'm confident. I think Danny White's determined to get that 12th game. I think he is determined to get that 7th home game because I think he wants that game, Murph and Jeff, on September 5th because, you don't know, like you said, this is going to be a week-to-week thing. You don't know what's going to happen. But if you can get 2 home games in with some limited participation, you've gotten some money back. You know what I mean? Whereas if you wait till September 12th, for all we know, that whole thing could be shut down by then. So I think he's going to shoot for September 5th. It'll be a home game. And I think this is all economics. You're trying to save some money because I think he feels with those 7 home games, they could probably end up breaking even or make a profit this year, believe it or not.
Yeah. Well, whoever it is that UCF does get,
I correct one thing. They will not. Yeah. They will not make a profit.
Right.
They will not make a profit.
I mean, you don't think they could break even? I mean, we've had our staff.
No. They can't. No. They can't. They're not going to break even. The best they can do, because remember, first of all, UCF Athletics is a nonprofit anyway. But the best they can do is not lose as much as they would have.
I don't know. Our staff, our colleague Andrew, who's on our staff, kind of disagrees with it. He's written about that. He thinks they got a shot to maybe break even or make, depending on how this goes.
If you're only getting 9,000 fans in the stands, you are not going to get the revenue that you.
Are you not including the TV revenue, which is in its first year with ESPN? Are you not including sponsorships?
That is separate from game day revenue.
Plus, here's the other thing. What if it's season ticket holders? What if it's donors?
Listen, the media deal money is coming regardless of how many people are in the stands. Okay, but UCF does get about from various sources that I've heard about $1.5 to $1.7 million per game, assuming that there's a decent crowd. Obviously, if you're cutting it from 40 to 45,000 down to 9,000 people, it's that many fewer people who are parking, who are paying for parking, who are buying merchandise. That also factors into it.
I think you're gonna have less people working that event, so that you're gonna make up some money that way as well.
You're not gonna make up hardly anything.
I think we disagree on this. I think they're not. I think they will at least break even.
Well, you can disagree all you want, but math tells you that it's just not going to be that way.
I'll take Danny White's words on this. He was very forthright on Wednesday, saying that no matter what happens, even if it's perfect, the financial hit to UCF athletics will be significant this year. His words were, quote, "That's something that we're going to have to deal with on the back end. I'll have to figure it out. I'm not the only AD in this country that I think all of us are going to have to figure out how to handle the financial impact. It's going to be significant, but it can't be a part of our guiding decisions." Again, even if they have 12 games, 7 at home, 4 non-conference, whatever, they're going to lose money. They know that, and they'll figure it out after the season.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I said, we'll just have to figure it out from there. By the way, one thing we don't have to figure out is where UCF is ranked in the coaches poll. That came out today. Boy, that was like the least I feel like this was like the least look forward to coaches poll ever. So UCF came in ranked 21st, the highest ranked non-autonomous 5 program in the USA Today coaches poll. Number 21 was UCF. One spot ahead of Cincinnati, who came in at 22. There were Murph 3 other AAC schools that were receiving votes.
Right. So Memphis, Navy, or Memphis, SMU, and Tulane, I believe.
That's right. Memphis, SMU, and Tulane. So and Boise State was not in the top 25. So at least a good start for UCF in the coaches poll. I don't think anyone really gives a rip at this moment.
They actually better, because in this type of year, I think the polls actually do mean a lot more, because I don't think there's going to be a ton of bowl games. So if you're UCF, you right now are in the driver's seat to be the G5 champ, if you will, if there is a marquee bowl game that you would get to play in. So I do actually think that is relevant. You control your destiny. And I think it's bigger for the American. I think they clearly have a gap. And I just don't think anybody in the Mountain West or the Sun Belt is going to have any games that's going to be marquee like the American is. I think the American has a lock right now at being in that bowl slot, if there is a bowl game.
Yeah, and I think that's also a big if at this point. But you know what?
Go ahead. I can't believe that Erik Lopez is vouching for the coaches poll.
Well, I do. Well, because I think that's honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if that's how we're going to decide the national championship this year. Because I'm not optimistic. First of all, I'm not optimistic.
It'll be like a throwback to 1984. We'll have to wait for the next day to see the polls come out, and we won the national championship. Look at that.
It very well could, because who's to say you get every game in? Who's to say you can get a college football playoff in? So I could see a scenario where, let's say they got 8 games in or 9 games in, they just decide, all right, we'll do one more poll, and whoever's number 1 is the national champion.
Especially as the weather gets bad and all that.
Right. I can play that game too and go, what's to say we'll get any games in? So why worry about it in the first place? My thing is if we're going to assume that a football game's going to be played, right, and that this is going to unfold as scheduled, because again, we can't just we can assume and just think that we're going to lose games and that the season's going to be cut off at some point because of an outbreak. But the plan is right now across college football is to get through the season and have a college football playoff decided by the CFP. So as of right now, as I wrote on the site, these polls don't matter. And I can't believe I'm butting against Erik Lopez this.
In a normal year, I 100% agree with you. But we don't know how long this. What if the season gets shut down after 7 games or 5 games? They might decide at that point, you know what? That's it. That's all we're going to play. We're going to pick teams based on that. It's such a quirky year. Anything's possible this year. So all I'm saying is it's better to be right now ahead than being behind at any point, because you don't know when the season ends.
We will cross that bridge when we come to it. By the way, I forgot Navy. Navy is also receiving votes. So we have SMU, Navy, Memphis, and Tulane. 4 AAC teams receiving votes, with Cincinnati and UCF and Cincinnati ranked 21 and 22 respectively. Look, we don't know anything. That's the point.
Right.
So if we don't know anything about what's going to happen, we can only assume that what's planned is going to happen. And if that happens, then again, these polls don't matter. if it comes to the point that, oh, by the way, we have to scrap everything. The CFP is not a thing this year. That poll has to, that poll is now null and void, and we're going off of the AP poll, which comes out in a couple of weeks, by the way. It's not even out yet. Then we'll come to that. But right now, these polls don't matter.
Well, if nothing else, right? This year will give a whole different understanding of our favorite coaching cliche: just go 1-0, right?
Oh, yes.
We literally, we are literally.
Is that one game at a time or one day at a time?
Yeah, that one day at a time. Literally, don't worry about even going 1-0 each week. Just go 1-0 for the day. We get through the day, that's a win. It's
probably pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, I said one day, literally one day at a time. We're gonna find out what that means here, in short order. All right, let's take a quick break. We come back. We're going to talk about the plans for the Olympic sports, volleyball, soccer, cross country, everything else, what that's going to look like for UCF's teams. And we will talk about news about McKenzie Milton, and a little bit later, some comings and goings for UCF as well. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Erik Lopez, Brian Murphy with you here as we discuss all of a sudden this fire hose of news coming at us this week. Now, in addition to what we just talked about in the previous segment, UCF or the American releasing its football plans for the fall, they also released the plans for the other fall sports as well. And we've got the breakdowns for soccer, men's and women's, volleyball, and also cross country. So we're going to kind of roll through this here real quick. And we're going to start with volleyball and kind of break this down real quick from a UCF perspective. So volleyball, here's how they're going to do it. Remember, UConn is gone. But the conference is still going to split into two divisions. The East is going to contain 5 teams, including UCF, Cincinnati, East Carolina, Temple, and USF. Boy, that's a crowded division, rather. The West will have everybody else. So Houston, Memphis, SMU, Tulane, Tulsa, and Wichita State. Here's how the schedule is going to work for volleyball. Each team will play this is according to the American, each team will play the other teams in its division twice at the same site. Okay, so when UCF plays Cincinnati, they will play them twice. There are no cross-divisional games. That means, obviously, the conference will be unbalanced. Conference play is expected to begin the weekend of September 24th through 27th. That's what it was expected to be. Matches will be played between Thursday and Sunday. Here's where it gets complicated. The women's volleyball tournament will happen November 21st and 22nd at Cincinnati. It's already been predetermined because Cincinnati was the regular season champ last year, and they're hosting it at the home of the regular season champ from the prior year. It'll be just a 4-team tournament. Last year it was 6. UCF won 3 matches in 3 days to win it. And there will be 3 weekends for non-conference matches starting September 1st. My take on this, Erik and Brian, is UCF kind of gets a break in only playing 8 conference matches. But 2 of them are against Cincinnati, so I'm going to be interested to see where those matches will be played. All their other matches will be against teams that were sub 500 last year. And then they're going to have to go to Cincinnati for the tournament, assuming obviously we get that far. And obviously all of this is kind of, like we were talking about the previous segment, is day to day.
We're burying the lead here, which is we don't even know if there's going to be an NCAA tournament yet.
Right. That's the other factor. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm sorry I did that because the NCAA kind of kicked the can down the road and said, as far as we thought they would make a decision on the 4th. They didn't. And they said essentially each division will determine what it's whether it will host a championship in a particular sport. And I think what did they say was the threshold, Erik? That if half the teams,
50%, yeah,
if 50% of the teams in a given sport in a division cancel, then there will be no championship. As far as volleyball is concerned, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I do not see how many have canceled. I know that it's not 50%. So at least as of right now, there is a volleyball season. Again, this is still a very fluid situation. My thought on it is it's a real bummer that the one thing that's a bummer that UCF won't play that many games is like something we talked about before. We got some players who are kind of on the verge of some milestones, and they're not going to have as many games with which to reach them. Even if UCF plays the full 3 weekends in non-conference, which who knows if they will. That's another thing that we just have no idea on right now. But at least in terms of UCF potentially winning the conference and maybe getting a bid to the NCAAs if there is an NCAA tournament. I don't know. I think for volleyball it kind of worked out, don't you think, Erik?
Well, it's a hard thing to discuss until we know exactly if there's going to be an NCAA tournament or not, because
it's hard. It's also hard to know based on the front end and the back end with the non-conference too.
But my argument is, and this is, the NCAA, they should be, you know what the NCAA stands for? It's the National Cowards Athletic Association, because they're a bunch of cowards. It's embarrassing how pathetic they are. And it's just, and people give a Power Five the hard time.
We knew this was coming.
It's just, how can anybody defend this? How can anybody defend their actions here, their lack of activity, and just, you guys decide, we don't know what to do.
Here's where Mark Daniels, I think, made a good point the other day, because who makes up the NCAA? It's the member schools, right?
It's just unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable that we do not know that if there's a postseason, because I think that drastically changes everything. In my opinion, if there's no NCAA tournament, in my opinion, there's no point in playing soccer or volleyball this fall. None, in my opinion. You're playing for nothing, especially in this truncated season. So I think it's absurd. Now, I think what's going to happen is I think they're going to try to pull off the tournament. The question then becomes, what is the tournament? Because they even alluded to it. It's probably going to be a shorter tournament. So how many teams get in? What's the criteria? Are we going back to the future? Popular movie trilogy there, Murph, with Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. Are we going back to the future here, where kind of during the Michelle Akers days, where you had a committee that picked out the teams to fill out the slots instead of guarantees? We might be headed towards that. I don't know. Nobody knows. So to me, that's the first step. Do we have a tournament? Because I think if we don't, then all of this is irrelevant, in my opinion. Now, the second thing is,
I don't agree with that statement, but that's for another time.
You're gonna waste the season with no tournament?
You're still playing for what? You're still playing for your conference.
Think
about it. We're okay with that in FCS football. Why doesn't that apply to other sports?
Who says we are okay with that in FCS football?
Well, I mean, obviously, personally, I don't, but we've always been dealing with it that way.
You mean FBS?
Or FBS football? Yes, thank you.
Well, I think the difference there is everybody's going for the money. There's no money to be made in soccer and volleyball. So football's an economic sport. So that would be the difference. That's probably why FAMU is playing as an independent, because they need the paycheck. To me, I would not want to waste, 10 matches, 15 matches for nothing. I would rather redshirt the year like Arizona State is doing in swimming and have my best players for a full season, a normal season to play for champion. Because here's the thing. If you're UCF volleyball, you've won the conference championship twice. You've done that. You got bigger goals than that. Your goals are not to win another conference title. You've done that. Your goal is to go deep in the tournament and make a lot of noise and become the first team ever in the Division I era to get to a Sweet 16, which I think is very realistic. But if there's no NCAA tournament, it can't happen. So, we'll get into this more once the NCAA, if they ever do decide to make a decision. For all we know, they may decide to sit this out for the whole year. But I think
let's assume they're going to play this, and let's assume that and let's assume if the goal is all right, let's win the American, Do you like UCF's chances?
Well, yeah, but that's the interesting thing about this is they may have to win it to get to the tournament. We don't know. That's the thing. I'd like to know because I think we all kind of agree the league is, in volleyball anyway, is supposed to be down this year. So I think there's real questions, and that's what stinks about this. For Todd and to some extent Tiffany, they base their schedule off that non-conference schedule to strengthen their RPI, to strengthen the resume, to get them ready for postseason. That's going to be hard to duplicate that. Now, at volleyball, at least, they, I guess, have the room to do that. Maybe they could add a Florida. Maybe they could add a Florida State. But the problem is, if I had to guess, is Florida is probably going to want them to come to Gainesville. So do you do that? I don't know. So I think those are some of the tough things about it. I do think it's interesting, the scheduling. To your point, is UCF going to Cincinnati to play 2 matches? How does that work? Is it a Friday-Saturday? Is it a Friday-Sunday schedule?
It would be a doubleheader.
In the same day?
It's certainly a possibility. I don't know if they've mandated that they be doubleheaders, but I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if we didn't see that for at least some of them. Because remember, and we'll get to this with one of the other sports, or with a couple with soccer in particular.
Right.
They really don't want overnight trips.
Well, and I agree with that. And I think that's the other thing is how are teams going to travel? So, like, is UCF because my concern for them is they're going to fly commercial, and you could take all the protocols you want. That doesn't stop you from sitting down in a commercial plane next to some person in aisle 9 that was out, at a bar the night before. You just can't control that. That's my concern. So I want to know more about the protocols as far as traveling is concerned. Obviously, bus rides are a factor, but can UCF, for example, hypothetically bus to Cincinnati? That's a long bus trip if it is.
13-hour bus ride.
Right. Is that legal? Because when I used to travel with softball, I was told that it's 8 hours is the max, either 8 hours nonstop or, 8 hours back and forth, whatever. Because at some point the bus driver has to take a break, et cetera. So do you bus on your way? Like if you were to me, what I wonder is, could you see a schedule where maybe UCF buses to East Carolina and then from there goes to Cincinnati? I don't know. I have no idea. Or maybe they're just going to fly and then you just take your chances. I have no idea. But I think those are some of the interesting questions. I didn't know about the doubleheader. It makes a lot of sense because I guess you can pull that off in volleyball. You can pull it off. Soccer, you cannot. So, but they're only playing one match against each team. So, but that's interesting, the doubleheader aspect of it. That would make a lot of sense.
You do it in non-conference anyway, right?
True. That's a great point. Right. That's a great point. It's not unheard of. It's certainly not unheard of. By the way, excellent segue to women's soccer because you talked about the travel protocols and you also talked about, the situation with Tiffany Roberts-Hadak and UCF. Here's what women's soccer is going to look like. They'll play an 8-match single round robin schedule in conference. Now, there are 9 soccer teams in the American, so everyone plays each other just once, 4 home, 4 away. Conference games will be played on Sundays only. All right, so no weekday games in conference. Begins September 6th. Usually we're used to soccer starting in August. Midweek, now you can play midweek non-conference games starting September 1st, but only if the opponent meets the standards and testing guidelines set by the Americans Medical Advisory Group. Midweek games, here's what's interesting. They can only be played against teams that can make it a day bus trip. So no flights, you can't fly somebody in, and no hotel stays. All right? They show up, they play, they leave. All right? The tournament will be 4 teams held on the 6th and the 8th at the home of the top seed. And if the top seed can't host the championship because of whatever, local restrictions or what have you, then the site moves to the next highest seed. This is my quick analysis, which you can read on blackandgoldbanneret.com. This is basically the standard operating procedure. Nothing actually really changed here in terms of the soccer schedule, if I'm not mistaken, because they don't play home. Do they play home and homes? Yeah, they do play home and homes. They
right?
do, yeah.
Okay.
What they do is that certain teams come.
They
would play USF 1 year at home. The next year would be on the road. So.
Right. So, the midweek bus trip only rule means that Okay, what are you looking at in terms of the closest teams? Well, it actually works out for UCF in terms of the state of Florida. You got some strong teams out there. Florida State was RPI number 3 last year. Florida was 28th. FAU was 32. FGCU was in the top 80 RPI at 78. Miami's at 124. That's not great. FIU is 312, which shocks me how bad FIU is. But there's some options there for Tiffany to play, right?
It could. The conference being on Sunday only. Do you have any theories why just Sunday? Like, is that just because they want?
They don't want it on Saturday.
Well, it's just kind of weird. Instead of doing it
in a second, by the way.
It's just kind of weird. I mean, Houston still has to travel. I would assume they would travel Saturday and play Sunday and then leave, or vice versa. So, it's still kind of quirky. It's funny, and we'll get it. We've talked to Scott Calabrese about this and about Tiff. We've talked about how the soccer season is a sprint to begin with. If a normal season is a sprint, what do you call this?
Oh, this is like what's the character like Super Saiyan who runs with his hands dangling behind him? Murph, do you know who that might be?
I'm blanking on that.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know your own reference?
I don't know. I don't. Well, I saw it somewhere and I forgot what it was.
Oh my God! Cut this out of the show.
You know what? Just because you said so, I'm leaving it in. But yeah, you're right. I think that this is a real sprint. I wonder. I wonder if that push to make it a fall and spring sport once COVID clears out. If that, I hope that really does happen, and I wonder if they're still working behind the scenes to make that happen when everything comes back to normal. You know what I mean? But anyway, men's soccer I think is fairly. Oh, by the way, it's a Naruto run. I finally looked it up. That's why I was stalling here.
Okay, you described it wrong. Yes, I know what that is. I'm not a huge fan of anime, but yes, I know what that is.
I know nothing about anime, but I know that.
Okay, his arms are not dangling behind like that. That's the wrong. That is the wrong. That is the wrong verb there, Jeffrey. He's not dangling. They're kind of pointed straight out, but behind him as he runs, sort of head down, charging.
Okay, so what we can in this overly raw analogy, this isn't just a sprint. The soccer season is a Naruto run, is what we're trying to say. Okay.
Not bad. I mean, we
got that on.
It took us 6 miles to get here, but it's a worthy analogy.
Look, we arrived safely. Men's soccer. All right, so now here's where is really interesting, Erik, because remember the American lost 2 men's soccer programs this offseason. UConn, obviously, because UConn left the league, and Cincinnati canceled men's soccer. All right, so there's only 6 teams in the American this year.
Oh.
They will play a 10-match double round robin schedule, home and away. All right, everybody plays each other twice. Conference games will be played on Saturdays beginning September 5th, but may be moved to Friday or Sunday if there's a conflict with a home football game. All right, so there's that. Midweek non-conference games can start September 1, just like the women. Midweek games can only be played against teams that can make the day bus trip, just like the women. The 4-team tournament for the conference will be held either November 12th and 14th or November 13th and 15th at the site of the top seed based on regular season record. Same thing if the top seed can't host, then it moves to the next seed. All right, if you're Scott Calabrese, this is also much more of a standard operating. I feel like if nothing happened, this is exactly how conference play would have worked out anyway, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, if the normal season's a sprint, I don't know what you call this. It's a crapshoot.
It's a Naruto run.
There you go. Well, it's something. I mean, you're right though. I think this would have been probably I feel like honestly they didn't deviate too much what their original plans were from a conference standpoint. Volleyball is probably the exception.
They didn't have to because they lost UConn and Cincinnati. That's
right.
Why.
I agree. So, look, man, I hope it works out. I really do. I still have questions about the protocols, the traveling. I just worry about that when you're traveling commercial. I mean, they're not like football that's traveling whenever they feel like it. I have worries about that. I hope everybody knows what they're doing and they can get it through. And I hope there's an NCAA tournament that they're playing for, because again, to me, if there's no postseason, I think that's a travesty to go through all this and then not have a postseason. So, but you're right. I think men's soccer, this probably was going to be their plan. It would be their plan moving forward with this schedule. It makes sense.
By the way, UConn and Cincinnati last year were 6th and 7th in the American, respectively. So
I do think that, by the way,
so your schedule didn't get much easier at all.
I do think of the three, men's soccer can carry its own weight. This was a top 5 league last year, and you just mentioned it. They got rid of Cincinnati, was terrible. Connecticut actually was not good last year, but they're usually they're usually pretty good. They severely underachieved last year. But this league actually could still get multiple bids. I think they actually will be okay without many non-conference games, if at all. Whereas I think volleyball gets hurt big time if they don't schedule non-conference. And for that matter, women's soccer to some extent, because the women's soccer conference is wacky. It's up and down. Some years it's strong, some it's not. Volleyball, I think the expectations were with Jordan Thompson graduating that Cincinnati's going to take a step back, and really it's UCF and everybody else. And that's, it just stinks because, again, we know Todd schedules a tough non-conference schedule, and by the way this is all going to shape out, he's probably got no chance of hosting a post NCAA tournament like he did a couple years ago. So that's the ramifications of some of this, assuming there is a postseason. And who knows, they might go predetermined anyway. So it's interesting, but hopefully it works out for everybody and they can get them through. Now, when would volleyball be played? Because you've mentioned men's soccer would be Saturdays in most cases. Women's soccer is Sundays. Do we have a specific when?
Volleyball? No, volleyball did not mention.
Okay.
I mean, I have more questions about volleyball than anything else because, how are they okay with splitting the conference into 2 divisions where one side plays fewer matches than the other? I'm sure that.
Don't you think it's traveling? Don't you think traveling is the motivating there? You're trying to avoid UCF going to Tulsa and all that. Right,
but I don't know, man.
That's the problem. It's all travel.
It feels like some of the other coaches out in volleyball in the American kind of they didn't. It's not as thorough. I know for a fact that there are some discrepancies with the coaches.
But what would you have done differently? I don't really Again, I think this was travel motivated. You don't want UCF traveling to Wichita State and Tulsa.
No, obviously, but they're scheduled to travel to Temple, which how far away is UCF from Temple compared to Houston?
Oh, I don't disagree with you on that part. Yeah, I mean,
or Tulane for that matter. Tulane is that much closer, being in New Orleans. So, and man, I don't know. It's plus you're going to have this imbalance with playing twice in the same venue. So, let's say UCF and Houston play, or UCF and Cincinnati play. Clear advantage to whichever team is home for that, right?
Well,
let's not forget UCF lost both games or both matches to.
But they were going to. But the thing is,
last year anyway. But
they were going to play twice anyway, regardless of the circuit. Whether there's divisions or no divisions, they were going to play twice more than likely because.
I know, but you would have had one here and one there, and that's
right. But they're trying to eliminate travel, and I applaud that. I think you have to eliminate travel there. Now, if you want to say that you don't need the divisions for that, you could just schedule it based on geography and miles. Okay, but unfortunately, this league is too big. It's too wide. So you're either going to have to go to Temple or you're going to have to go to Tulane or you're going to have to go somewhere. You can't just stay within the region. And who knows?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the team, when you look at this, the team that really gets screwed is Temple.
Well, yeah.
Because they're the only team in the Northeast.
Right.
I mean, the next closest team to them, I don't know if it's Cincinnati or ECU, but it's at least a 500-mile drive. So I don't know, man. I think you're right. I think that they kind of all got backed into a corner. There's nothing about this that doesn't stink. It's just the hand that you're dealt. So with that many teams, and it's a head count sport, don't forget. And with that many teams that field volleyball rosters, you don't have as many in soccer on the men's or the women's side. So that, fewer mouths to feed means it's a little bit easier to figure out. But I don't know. It's going to be a tough path for anyone in the American volleyball. But quick note. Excuse me. Cross country. They can schedule as many meets as they want as long as they're after September the 1st. The championships will be held on Halloween in Augusta, Kansas.
What? Wait, what?
Yeah. Men's and women's cross country championships in the American will take place Halloween, Saturday, October 31st at 4 Mile Creek Resort in Augusta, Kansas, which I'm guessing means Wichita State is
gotta be.
hosting.
Yeah, got it.
So,
holy mackerel.
Everything else, Murph, baseball, softball, Erik Lopez, rowing, golf, and tennis will be announced at a later date. Any fall competition for the spring sports will be announced at a later date. I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath. Yeah.
Modifications to the winter sports, which for the American is basketball, or for UCF would mean basketball and indoor track and field, will also be announced at a later date. And once the medical advisory group comes up with the protocols, we'll know what they are. So yeah, there's your look at the Olympic sports in terms of what's going on. It's gonna be weird, man. It's gonna be a wild ride. There's no doubt about it. So
we should also be clear about in regards to the championships. Like you said, I know we've been bamboozled before, but we could have a decision next week from the D1 Council. Now this or not.
That's what we thought the last 2 weeks.
Or not. However, there is an end date to all of this. So what was supposed to be decided by the Board of Governors back in July and then got pushed to the Board of Directors in August, and now it's on to the D1 Council. The D1 Council meets next week, an indeterminate date as far as I know, but sometime next week they're going to meet and could decide on the fate of fall championships that day when they meet next week. And whatever they recommend will be acted on by the Board of Governors, the Board of Directors. However, even if they don't decide anything, there is a set deadline for all of this. It is August 21st. That is the deadline for determining whether to move forward with fall championships. So, at the very latest, we will know by August 21st whether or not any of these fall championships are going to be existing. And if they're not, then that obviously would have we're having a whole different discussion.
Murph, where do you side on that? If there's no postseason, should they even play the fall?
Well, this is hard to okay, for a non-revenue sport, right, in which you've got all these NCAA minimums that have been changed this year. Remember, you had the NCAA has these minimums of games you have to play in a certain sport per season. Well, because of the pandemic, those things have been slashed basically in half to where now, Erik, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got soccer teams, I believe, that are playing 6 matches. Is that worth it?
Right. No, I think that's a fair question.
But here's the slippery slope that I think you go down here, Erik and Murph, is if you say, well, if there's no NCAA championship, then it's not worth it. Then what you're also saying is just let the Power 5 play these sports and nobody else does, because, it's, as we know, it's not very frequently that you would have a non-Power 5 schools compete in that respect. That's just the sad truth of it, right? So
I disagree with that. I don't think that has a factor in that. I think everybody wants to play the very best, and actually soccer in particular is the most wide open. You can make that argument in volleyball. Volleyball's got an issue with that, where the Big 10 and Big 12 dominate volleyball and all that.
The Pac-12, don't forget the Pac-12. Right.
But soccer is actually the most wide open. Heck, UCF.
That's fair.
UCF was 1 goal away from the Elite 8 in men's soccer. Elite 8. The SMU was a goal away from the Final 4. So in men's soccer, Akron's won national championships in men's soccer. I don't agree with that. I think some of these there's bigger goals there than just playing through 5-10 matches just for fun. Now, the question, and that's why I think this decision has to be made quick, because the follow-up would be, do we get the extra year red shirt if I decide not to play a specific kid? Because I could see coaches treat this, if there's no NCAA tournament, who's to say you don't treat this like you would a normal spring where you just practice and then redshirt the kid? I mean, I think that's why it's absolutely absurd that the NCAA punted on this again and delay this now to make this a last-minute decision. It's a joke.
Well, you actually brought up a good point that I think we neglected. Murph, what was your point you were going to make?
No, go ahead. Finish your point.
No. I'm going to search.
Well, you talked about making sure the P5 play their championships with these non-revenue sports. We're talking about all of D1. This is including all of D1. So I don't know how the P5 would be different than the G5 here.
Yeah. No, I hear you. There was the thing that I was going to mention, Murph, and I think you helped me out on this, because there was some news about the ability for players to retain their scholarships. Is that right?
Right, and this has been basically acknowledged by the NCAA, but the AAC also put out its own release on Thursday, basically saying that if a player in any fall sport does not feel comfortable or safe playing in their sport this semester in the fall season, and would like to opt out, would decide not to play because of the pandemic, or really for any reason, really. I mean, you can just say you don't have to. There's no doctor's note needed. You can just say I don't feel safe, and you can opt out. If you don't want to play, you can go, and your scholarship will be upheld through the basically the 2020-2021 academic year, basically going over into the spring semester.
And you retain eligibility too, right?
Right. You remain in good standing with the program that you're in, and you retain eligibility. So again, that's a good cover for for unpaid laborers. Who we can talk about it so much.
Nice of them, right?
We cannot forget this. That schools and people are making money off the back of others who are unpaid. And if you think that a scholarship is money, you're wrong. Wrong.
Now, Murph, can you clarify? So, if they opt out, they would still get the extra year back, right? They would get it back for the following year.
As far as I know, and see now it's like, oh my God, how do I know this off the top of my head? And now this is bad podcasting.
I would assume that's the
great
case.
Podcasting. We're trying to figure this out. It's journalism 101.
I would assume that's the case, because I think you could see some players opt out if in the Olympic sports if there is no NCAA tournament. I mean, can you imagine if Major League Baseball decided tomorrow, hey guys, keep playing the rest of the season, but there's no World Series? What? You're going to put me at health risk, and then we're not going to even have a postseason? Get out of here! I'm going to opt out. So I think you could see that, and I think that's why. And it's worth noting, D2 and D3, they didn't waste any time. They canceled all 4 championships, and it will not be made up in the spring. So those sports are done. And I don't know if D1 will do that, because if D1 canceled the Olympic sports, that puts a ton of pressure on the FBS to still try to have a season. They're like, really?
Well, what was it? I think they said I think they said at the FCS level, a bunch of schools have already wiped their schedules, and if the Big Sky was thinking about it, and
Brett McMurphy has reported they are opting out. Yeah.
Yeah. You sent me that. You sent me that tweet earlier that from Ralph Russo of the Associated Press, that if the Big Sky Conference opts out, that's it. FCS is under 50% of programs that are playing, and then they'll cancel the fall championship in FCS football.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree. And the interesting thing is the trend has been, it doesn't look like they would be willing to move the fall championships to the spring. It sounds like either they're going to try to play the fall championships, or it's going to get canceled and that's it. It's done. So We'll see.
All right. Let's take a quick breather. Oh, go ahead.
Can I double back on what I was trying to look up? So the AAC's announcement makes no mention of eligibility. In the NCAA announcement that came out on the 5th, it says each division must determine no later than August 14th the eligibility accommodations that must be made for student athletes who opt out of participating this fall, or for those whose seasons are canceled or cut short due to COVID-19. College athletes and their families must know what their eligibility status will be before beginning the fall season. So we don't know right now whether or not.
Of course not.
Of course we don't know. Of course we don't know.
We don't know.
As I was yelling at Erik in the last segment, we don't know anything. So again, we don't know what the football season is going to look like. We don't know if fall championships in Division I are going to be held. We don't know if players opt out.
We're all Sergeant Schultz out here. We know nothing of what's going on.
But there is a chance. Certainly with eligibility, we will know that by August 14th. With fall championships, we will know that by no later than August 21st, possibly as soon as next week. And with football, you just kind of play by ear. We go day by day.
All right. Well, we're going hour by hour, and we're figuring this thing out. Stick around. When we get back, some comings and goings here and there. Some good news, some sad news, and some good news for in the realm of UCF when we return. Stick around. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Erik Lopez, Brian Murphy with you. UCF_Banneret is where you can find us on Twitter, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And, of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can follow us individually at Jeff_Sharon, Erik Lopez Elo, and Spokes_Murphy. All right, comings and goings here, but a busy show. Wow. First of all, don't know if it's a coming or a going just yet, but did y'all see the video of McKenzie Milton? He finally had his doctor appointment up in what is it? Where did he go? Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And Teresa Milton, his mom, released some Instagram video of the workout that he was doing. And I just got to say, it's truly remarkable. Is he obviously doing full contact drills? No. But to see him doing the sort of shuffle or the shuttle drill that he was doing, and, on that leg, when you think back to, just, less than 2 years ago?
Yeah.
It's nothing short of inspiring. And we have no idea whether or not, he'll be cleared or not cleared. There was no word given on that. But frankly, I don't care. It's just to see him in good shape, or what looks like good shape with that leg, is just remarkable. So we're not going to speculate on whether or not he's going to get cleared. I don't think that's even fair. I'm just happy to see him moving well on 2 feet. What about you guys?
I wrote the same thing. I think the problem is, right, if he is cleared, the minute he's cleared, all of a sudden people are going to be talking about quarterback competitions and where does he fit in.
And that's too bad, because it shouldn't be about that, right?
Right. That cheapens what has been achieved here. And again, there are still obstacles that McKenzie obviously wants to overcome. He wants to play again. Like Jeff said, we don't have firm confirmation that he's been cleared. Danny White, basically sidestepped that question on Wednesday. That will all be
as though Danny White would know anyway.
He's the AD of the program. He would know something, but certainly that'll be figured out as he continues on and figured out with the doctors and trainers and coaches. But it's clear that McKenzie Milton, his rehab, even 20 months on now, he has really made just amazing strides. I think and has really rehabilitated himself to levels that I'm not sure people thought he would ever achieve again. And you saw that in that video, like I said, Jeff, of him jumping on that leg, putting all his weight on that leg and jumping down a straight line and backpedaling and shuffling, running full speed off that leg. It's really amazing to watch. And so, no, we don't know yet whether he'll be playing football again. Again, I know he wants that, and that's fantastic. But this is good. This is certainly, for now, this should be good enough. And maybe it is good enough forever, because he looks like he can live a normal life. And for a man who undoubtedly, indisputably, came within a very short span of time from being an amputee to being from there to now. It is truly remarkable. It's inspiring. He is, like Danny White said, he is an ambassador of the university. And not only because of what he did as an athlete, but what he has done just as a person working to overcome adversity. It's been amazing. And so we continue to wish him nothing but the best. And we'll see what happens. I'm sure when we talk to Josh Heupel, maybe next week, we'll ask him about it. What does he think about McKenzie? Where does he stand? Is there a possibility that he plays this season? And those questions will be asked. But again, it cannot overshadow what that man is accomplishing right now, which is really it's hard to put into words.
Truly inspiring. I mean, you know how inspiring this was, and I am not trolling here. I really do mean it. I wanted to pull this up because it was an excellent tweet in general. You guys know Robert Stieg?
I've heard of the name.
So he's a big USF fan on Twitter. He doesn't write anything for he does write for Daily Stampede. His bio says he's the meme master general for Daily Stampede. But he actually sent out a tweet, and I want to read this correctly. We know exactly where Stieg is coming from on basically everything, okay? But his word on this, okay, here it was. McKenzie Milton's this is Robert Stieg tweeting on August the 5th. McKenzie Milton's progress from being on the brink of losing his leg to being able to do light agility drills is absolutely inspiring. And that shows you how much this transcends everything having to do with competition. So, I think we all can say, certainly, no matter what happens, no matter what the end result is, to see that it's gotten to this point is miraculous, and we're really happy for McKenzie. And however far he wants to progress is fine with us.
I'll mention this one last thing. This is a statement that was given to Adam Shadoff of Fox 35. It was given to him from McKenzie's dad. The statement reads, "All of KZ's medical and physical tests went very well at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota." By the way, it's in Rochester. I said Minneapolis as I correct myself for like the fifth time. But anyway, quote, "His progress in his rehab and at practice moving forward in all aspects of being a quality QB will determine when he is ready to play again at a high level. He looks forward to working hard in the next steps of his journey to play football again." Again, we are not at the end of the road. I think McKenzie knows that he has not achieved his ultimate goal, which is to play football again. But for the rest of us, I don't know how you can come away from what we've learned this week. Even though some of us, I mean, certainly even me included, because going into this meeting with the doctor, we were all anticipating it because McKenzie said outright back in May that the doctor, might clear him for, and so we were like, oh my God, could they actually clear him for football activities? And so even though we don't have that, that doesn't make this any less successful or remarkable. And so yeah, we'll see how McKenzie continues to rehab during the fall. But where he is right now, it's just amazing.
Last word on this: if you haven't seen the video, go see it. Murph's got a story up on the site. It's really something. All right. Going to discuss Erik Kohler, the longtime public address announcer for multiple UCF sports, but most recently and most prominently, obviously, football and men's basketball, announced he is stepping away from that position this week to spend more time with his family. He didn't give any more details other than that. You just suffice it to say, like, it's there, and I said this earlier, there's obviously, whatever's going on, I'm hoping everything is okay for Erik and his family, but UCF is just not going to be the same without the mayor. It's just not. And, he's been a friend of mine and Erik's for And yours, Murph, for a very long time, and just kindest guy in the world, would give you the shirt off his back. And, I don't know what it's going to be like at football and men's basketball this year. I remember him doing volleyball back in the day. He was at everything. And, just wanted to, on behalf of us, reach out to Erik and say, hey, thank you so much for everything that you've done. It's not going to be the same without you. We hope everything goes well for you and the fam. And once again, shout out to the mayor for more than 20 years of service to UCF as the in-stadium voice. I did a story on him when I was doing when I was on UCF Sports Night in-house. And just a great interview. It actually turned out to be probably my favorite story that I did in the 2 years that I was there, or certainly one of them. And I posted it on Twitter. I'll make sure I post it on the site too. It's really fantastic. And we hope you're doing well, Erik. And thanks again for everything, and stay in touch. Words on Erik, gentlemen. That's just not going to be the same at football without him.
No, I like you said, he is the mayor. He knew everyone. He wanted to shake everyone's hand and say hello and greet you with a smile. Obviously, the energy he brought was synonymous with UCF football and basketball. But I will remember him just being happy to be there, happy to be in the baseball stadium or wherever, and just happy to see you. And he always greeted you with a smile and a joke or a story, and that was a lot of fun. So he is definitely the mayor, always will be the mayor, and we will certainly miss his energy and good nature.
Exactly. So, last thing we wanted to end with was at least some happy news in terms of a coming to UCF. You broke the news earlier today. In fact, Brian Murphy, it's amazing that a story this big actually gets buried because of everything else that's been going on. But Divaad Wilson, former 4-star recruit, a defensive back at the University of Georgia, has announced that he is transferring to UCF. Graduate of Miami Northwestern, highly sought after recruit in the SEC. As you had mentioned in your story, Murph, man, this is a big get for Randy Shannon. We don't know if do we know if he's going to be eligible?
We don't know yet. He plans to apply for a waiver. That's actually according to Jason Beatty at 24/7 Sports. And so if he's eligible for this year, that'd be great. But this is not just about this year for Divaad, who's a redshirt sophomore. And for a cornerback group at UCF, which has a lot of seniors, you've got Brandon Moore, Tay Gowan, Aaron Robinson. They needed someone who is not only young, as a redshirt sophomore, Divaad is that, but he comes with talent and experience. And, he's got 13 games of SEC experience under his belt. He picked off a pass against Notre Dame, of all teams, last September. He's got a couple of starts. Obviously, he was recruited by teams like Alabama and Florida, Michigan, Ohio State, on and on and on. Initially committed, and this is kind of where the connection lies, right? Initially committed verbally to Florida in February of 2017. He was a member of the class of 2018. So he verbally committed to Florida in 2017, and Randy Shannon was his recruiter for Florida. Mm-hmm. Then he decommits from Florida late in November and flips to Georgia right before the early signing period in December of 2017. Of course, that was right after Randy Shannon took the gig to be UCF's defensive coordinator, and now they're reunited again. I'm sure that relationship had nothing to do with why Divaad decided to play at UCF, but all that sort of kidding aside, he is also coming home because, as he said in his message to really Bulldog fans when he decided to enter the transfer portal last month, he wanted to be closer to home in this time. Not specific on if there, the reasons why, but in this point in life, you don't need a specific reason to be closer to home. Anybody who wants to be closer to home right now should take any opportunity they can to be closer to their loved ones. And that's what Divaad's doing here. And he's chosen UCF to play hopefully the last 3 years of his college eligibility.
Quick question. If he is eligible this year, Murph, do you see him starting?
I think that depends on the health of Brandon Moore. I know in my story I didn't really talk about Brandon Moore, and we really haven't gotten much of an update on him in a few months. He's been very positive on social media about his rehab and recovery. You remember,
kind of under the radar with everyone paying attention to McKenzie Milton. I feel bad for Bam. He's just kind of chugging along, and no one notices.
I mean, everybody remember that Bam had the torn ACL and dislocated kneecap, I believe, in last August.
The FAMU game, the season opener.
On a play that was blowing dead. It wasn't even an interception. The ball hit the ground. It shouldn't have counted. It was a freak injury beyond freak. And so we don't know if he's exactly going to be ready for week 1, that obviously would impact if Wilson's eligible, that would impact his playing time. But man, can you imagine a way in which they would have Brandon Moore healthy, Tay Gowan, Aaron Robinson, who is really the best cornerback of the group last season, and then Divaad Wilson circling in there with also Dylan Lester or Zamari Maxwell. This team is absolutely jam-packed at cornerback. It's probably, just on paper, the best group I think this team has maybe ever had. And I know that sounds outrageous because of the DBs that the UCF has produced, but my goodness, all this talent at one time. But again,
absolutely, if assuming everything goes well, this team is absolutely stacked on defense.
And again, we're that's not even that. I don't want to brush over like Antoine Collier and Richie Grant at safety. Like, this defensive backfield is just ridiculous. But again, let's say Wilson's not eligible. That's fine. He would still have multiple years left, and then he would help build the foundation for the next generation of UCF's defensive backfield, which they're going to need because, like I said, Moore, Robinson, Gowan, all seniors.
Yeah. What was the number that Bill Connolly put up? Because he mentioned this actually in his thread. He posted his UCF numbers coming into this year about their defense. Scheduled to return. He said that the UCF's S&P Plus ranking, that's his rating system, keeps going up because the defense was the best since 2014. And they're last year he said UCF's defense was the best since 2014. And they're scheduled to return 18 of 21 players with 150 plus snaps under their belt.
Yeah.
That's wow.
There's a question mark. I mean, this is a bigger discussion we'll have a later date when we talk about sides of the ball and different positions, but certainly this team needs to replace Nate Evans and his sort of leadership ability. I think Richie Grant has that at some points, but otherwise, just in terms of experience and talent, this defense has a ton of it. I mean, Trayvon Moore-Sprash, Randy Charlton, Kenny Tunier, Eric Gilliard, Eric Mitchell, and then the secondary. Like, there's a ton of guys. They're gonna roll 7 or 8 defensive linemen out there. This defense could be the best one. It should. Early on, it should be the best one the UCF's had during this small, 3-4 year window of excellence. And if you couple that with a Josh Heupel offense that's rolling and has healthy weapons, I don't want to get
an undefeated season to me.
Oh boy,
I don't know how many games we're getting in, but we're not gonna lose a game.
We're gonna end the year 5-0.
Hey, but we'll be ranked. We'll be ranked. See, we'll be ranked.
Hey,
yeah, and then we'll be the national champion because we'll be ranked number 1 in the AP poll.
Or maybe Collie Matrix will rank. That'll be 2 in 4 years.
I don't think I've ever yelled. I don't think I've been that apoplectic on this podcast in a long time. To hear Eric Lopez argue in favor of the non-CFP poll, it broke me. I apologize.
It's a weird year, man. It's what happens. I've been spending time in the NBA bubble, getting like 1,000 post games. I mean, it does things to your mind. What can I tell you?
Everything got broken in half this year. All right, let's finish up real quick. Elo, what do you got coming up? We're very close to revealing our top 20 coaches, right?
Yes. We have got all the ballots in from our staff. It was a heated debate, no doubt, but we have got every vote in. And so that we will be unveiling that very soon. It'll be controversial. Some of you won't be happy about it. But again, as a staff, that's what we came up with. So we'll check that out. Also, cheap plug on my softball podcast, In the Circle SB, I have a one-on-one interview with former Knight McKenzie Milton, who is starting her own business, Pitching with Purpose, kind of doing pitching lessons. So for the softball fans, go to that. As I talked to Mac about her decision to go in that industry, giving lessons there and trying to help out the future pitchers in the game of softball. And outside of that, boys, I've been working. I got a job. I've been getting NBA post games in the bubble.
You've been killing your work covering the bubble for someone who's not actually in the bubble.
That's correct. That's what they wanted me to do, and that's the sacrifices I'll do. That's why you didn't hear me much in this segment, because I was literally editing audio as we recorded this. That's going to be my life until October, but I'm grateful that I have a sport in the NBA that does not have any positive tests and no interruptions or 1,000 double headers scheduled on the back end of a schedule. Some like other sports, Murph, right, Murph?
Absolutely. Eric, you gave me a great idea. In future segments, when you and Jeff talk about the Olympic sports that I'm not as knowledgeable on, I'm going to just say that I'm editing audio, and I'll leave it up to the listeners to decide whether or not that's true.
Or maybe we could do this while we do the Olympic segments. I'll send you the audio that I need you to cut up. Maybe you can help me out. Maybe we can work together on this.
I would definitely do work for you on the side. No pro bono, all pro bono. I'll give you access.
This is not on my dime.
I'll give you access, Murph, to the Laker locker room. Huh?
I can't wait. This is definitely what I'm living for now.
Murph, what do you got coming up this week? We're just kind of following what's going on with football on a day-to-day basis right now, right? I mean, all of a sudden, it feels like all of a sudden we've been thrown into preseason mode, right?
Well, we're there. I mean, we should be there for teams. I mean, certainly if you're playing in early September and that September 5th weekend, your camp starts on the 7th.
Yeah.
So you're there. We are in preseason mode because it's preseason. So we'll see what happens on Friday. There could be some more things coming out. Hey, you never know. Maybe there'll be a decision on the fall sports championships. Probably not, but who knows?
That would be something for the National Cowards Athletic Association there.
I assume, I love it. I assume that we will be in touch with Josh Heupel here, but I was like next week sometime. So we'll have some feedback off of that. And at this point, who knows what else? There could be a lot.
Well, the big question is going to be, when do we find out about this 12th game, right? I mean, if it's going to be September 5th, it has to be soon, right?
Right. And so, and again, I'm not exactly sure.
Let it just be a surprise opponent. We find out when.
Oh, we go the Monday Night Raw. We go their WWE routine where they just show up on September 5th.
Oh my God! Is that Navy's music? No, it can't be Navy.
Oh my God! That's Bethune-Cookman's music.
Oh my God! Is that New Mexico State's music?
Oh no, it's too far away, Jeffrey. Too far away. And by the way, going all the way back to something that Eric said in the first segment, it will not be Stetson. Stetson's actually playing football. It's conference only this year, guys. In the Pioneer.
Well, I don't know, man. You were just telling us earlier how FAMU's like, you know what? We're not in your conference this year. How about that?
Yeah, the difference is they don't have anywhere to play. They're a free agent.
Wow, free agent.
Are they a free agent, Murph, or a player to be named later?
Oh, now we're getting into semantics, and it's way too late for this.
Yeah.
By the way, since we did the wrestling reference, shout out to Cal Bloom, who was back in the stands there on Raw. I know nobody's watching Raw these days because it's nobody cares right now, but
we care because of Cal Bloom.
Damn right. It's good to see him back there. Cheering on the wrestlers, acting as a fan. So I'm glad he's doing okay. Former UCF football tight end. Shout out to Dylan Moore. Another home run against. Come on, Murph. Give it to us. Dylan Moore.
Okay, so the listeners don't know, that after our last podcast last week, we basically stayed on Skype talking and watching the Angels-Mariners game last week, in which Dylan Moore hit a home run. And I freaked out so much for reasons that are still unbeknownst to me. I don't know why I was so excited to see Dylan Moore hit a home run in live television, but I bruised my hand. That I don't know what happened, but I got so excited. Anyway, Dylan Moore is crushing it right now. He is now batting second. He's batting second in the Mariners lineup.
Murph, that's American League MVP candidate Dylan Moore.
It's him and Aaron Judge, right? Him and Aaron Judge.
It's got to be him. It's got to be him and the Judge, man.
So
he's outperformed Mike Trout. I mean, we now know Dylan Moore, the AL West, is Dylan Moore's division.
I wonder if Mike Trout has. Let's see. So let's go, Mike Trout. I bet you Dylan Moore has a better OPS plus. No, it's very close. Dylan Moore has a 2.
Listen, in a 60-game season, a streak like the one Dylan Moore's having, like that, I'm partially joking, but not entirely joking. Like, that's going to make an impact.
Well, I think it's amazing that he has worked, like we talked before the season started about. Well, he's a utility player. He literally was listed on the Mariners roster as a utility player who's going to be playing part-time, left side of the diamond, and then now he is playing every day in infield or outfield and playing, and now he's batting second. And the reason why he's batting second is because his slash line, batting average, on base percentage, and slugging percentage, 367, 700 over it's over 30 at bats. Oh, it's small sample size. Screw you. Everything is small sample size in baseball.
30 at bats. Yeah, we're only playing 60 games.
You can't. There are no qualifiers to any of this. Dylan Moore is crushing it right now.
That's basically a month. In a normal,
he's basically won a starting job, Murph. I mean, we talk about what, a 60-game schedule, small sample size, but that could change a guy's career if they have a great year or if they don't have a great year. And in Dylan's case, he's having a great year. He's earned a starting job. He's earned it.
Absolutely, Eric. Like I said, he has made himself a starting player. And this is a guy who was hanging on the fringes of Major League Baseball, which as I very much infamously said before the season started, on a bad team. He was on a bad team and hanging on the fringes, and now he has worked himself into an everyday role in a prominent spot in the lineup and really producing well. I'm trying to see where he ranks in terms of Fangraphs WAR among
Mariners team that could be in the mix for a 16-team playoff. They could make the playoffs, right? I mean, you don't have to be great to make the playoffs this year.
You don't have to be great. That is very much for certain.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't want to get into this. All right. As you guys all know, stick around or make sure you follow us as always at UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret and blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can follow us individually at Jeff_Sharon, Erik Lopez Elo, Spokes_Murphy. Thanks as always to our entire staff. We got some good stuff coming from Danny Medina, who's going to be who's just joined us recently, our most recent addition to the roster. She's got a couple stories coming out, as well as and also huge thanks, by the way, to Jeremy Brenner, who's been doing a great job in our new newsletter. In our new newsletter series that he's got every day, he pops out the best links to stories from around the Orlando sports world to follow if you're a UCF fan. By the way, we'll wrap it up with this. Orlando City, Vamos City, they're moving on to the MLS's back tournament final against Portland. They beat Minnesota today, and their old coach Adrian Heath 3-1. So Orlando City playing for a title, an MLS title, in a few days. So congrats to City. We'll be watching that, of course, as they're in the bubble down at Disney. For Eric and Brian, I'm Jeff. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.